Martha Grayson had lived alone in the mountains for nearly 40 years. The house, her house, was an ancient wooden structure long since surrendered to the elements. The roof sagged, the wooden planks groaned under the weight of time, and ivy wrapped itself around the frame like a slow-growing parasite. Most people in the nearby town of Cold Hollow whispered about Martha in hushed voices. Some said she was a witch. Others believed she was simply mad, driven to insanity by the isolation. But all of them agreed on one thing: it was best not to go near her house. On cold nights, lights flickered in her windows, even when there was no electricity for miles. Some claimed they heard voices drifting through the trees, guttural whispers carried on the wind. A few brave souls had ventured up the mountain to see if the rumors were true. None of them ever went back a second time. Martha herself never came down to town except for supplies. She'd walk in just before sundown, wrapped in a thick shawl, her white hair tangled like tree roots. The grocer, Mr. Talbot, once tried to strike up a conversation with her. "Cold up there this time of year, isn't it, Miss Grayson?" he said, forcing a smile. Martha had only stared at him with those watery grey eyes and whispered, "Not as cold as it gets." That was the last time anyone tried to be friendly. One October evening, a teenager named Adam Palmer decided to prove himself to his friends by hiking up to Martha's house. He was 17, full of reckless confidence, and had never believed the stories. Armed with a flashlight and a pocket knife, he made his way up the mountain. By the time he reached the house, the sun had dipped below the trees, leaving the world bathed in deep purple and black. The house stood silent, dark, and foreboding. Adam hesitated, suddenly aware of how foolish his idea was. But before he could turn back, a sound stopped him in his tracks. The front door creaked open. A figure stood in the doorway, barely visible in the dim light. "Come inside, boy." Martha's voice rasped, cracked and dry like dead leaves. "Been expecting you." Adam felt his heart seize. He hadn't knocked, he hadn't spoken a word. How had she known he was coming? He wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't move. It was as if the mountain itself held him there, rooted to the damp earth. The old woman raised a hand and beckoned him forward. "No need to be scared," she cooed. "A visitor is always welcome." Inside, the house smelled of rot and something else, something metallic. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the wooden floor, bending and twisting in the candlelight. Jars lined the shelves, filled with things that moved, things that should not have been alive. "Sit, boy, you must be tired from your long walk." Adam swallowed hard and shook his head. I should be getting back. My friends are waiting for me." Martha's lips curled into a smile. "No, they aren't. You came alone." His breath caught in his throat. He hadn't told anyone that. The candlelight flickered, and for a moment Martha's shadow stretched across the walls, impossibly large, her form shifting into something inhuman. Adam turned to flee, but the door had vanished, replaced by a solid wall of old, rotting wood. The last thing the people of Cold Hollow ever heard from Adam Palmer was a single blood-curdling scream echoing down the mountain. Martha was seen in town the next morning, humming softly as she bought a fresh bag of flour. The people of Cold Hollow pretended not to notice the deep scratches on her hands or the smile that lingered far too long on her lips.